On a quiet rotation aboard the Frontier Research Station Orion's Edge, Claire sat alone in her quarters, reviewing old linguistic logs from Earth's forgotten dialects. The hum of the station's life support was a steady companion, and the stars outside her viewport stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. She had signed up for this posting hoping to find silence, maybe even a little peace after the chaos of the Mars riots. Instead, she found herself cataloging alien signal fragments that made no sense day after day. Then the door slid open without warning. No alarm sounded, no authorization chime, just a soft hiss as the panel parted, and a figure stepped inside. Claire froze, her hand hovering over the emergency alert on her console, but the intruder didn't move like a threat. She moved like moonlight, slow, quiet, certain, tall and slender, with skin the color of pale silver, and eyes that shimmered violet in the low light. Her hair fell in loose waves, dark as deep space, threaded with faint strands that caught the light like stardust. She wore a simple tunic of woven fiber that seemed to shift colors as she breathed, and around her neck hung a pendant shaped like a coiled serpent eating its own tail. At her side, hovering just above the floor, was a creature no bigger than a house cat. It had 4 limbs, leathery wings folded against its back, and eyes that glowed amber. Its scales rippled from copper to gold as it tilted its head toward Claire. Tiny horns curled above its brow, and smoke curled gently from its nostrils, not threatening, just present like steam from warm tea. The woman stopped a few feet away. Her gaze was calm, searching, but not hostile. She studied Claire as if trying to read something written just beneath her skin. Then she spoke. "Can I sleep beside you tonight?" Human, her voice was soft, melodic, with a rhythm that felt ancient. It wasn't a demand. It was a question, fragile as glass. Claire blinked. She glanced at the door, then at the station's internal sensors on her screen. Nothing. No breach alerts, no unknown biometrics logged. It was as if this woman and her dragon had simply appeared out of thin air. "Who are you?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "My name is Lyra," the woman said, "and this is Ember." The small dragon gave a soft chirp and dipped its head as if bowing. Claire hesitated. Protocol said she should call security. But something in Lyra's eyes stopped her. There was exhaustion there, yes, but also sorrow. Deep and old, like the kind carried across lifetimes. And beneath it, a quiet kind of courage. "You just walked in here like you belong." "I do not belong anywhere anymore," Lyra said simply, "but I needed a place that felt safe. Your room, it hums with kindness." Ember sensed it. Claire frowned. Ember sniffed the air, then floated closer, landing lightly on the edge of her desk. It blinked slowly at her, then sneezed a tiny puff of warm smoke that smelled faintly of cinnamon. "Okay," Claire said slowly, "but you can't just show up in someone's room and ask to sleep next to them. That's the weird." Lyra tilted her head. "Among my people, to share sleep is not intimacy. It is trust. When the void grows cold, we gather close so our dreams do not drift away. You humans, you lock your doors. You sleep alone. It is strange to us." Claire rubbed her temples. This was not how she expected her evening to go. But the station was mostly empty. Only a skeleton crew remained after the last supply ship left, and Lyra didn't seem dangerous. Ember was watching her with what could only be described as affectionate curiosity. "Fine," she said, "but you stay on the floor, and if you try anything, I have a stun rod under my bed." Lyra smiled faintly. "Thank you, Claire. You know my name." "Ember told me," the woman said, nodding to the dragon who puffed its chest proudly. Over the next few hours, Claire learned more than she expected. Lyra spoke in careful, simple English, though her words sometimes carried odd phrasings as if she were translating not just language, but entire concepts from another way of thinking. She explained that she came from a people called the Scifi, star wanderers who once mapped the songs of dying stars and recorded the last words of extinct civilizations. They were not warriors, she said, but keepers, guardians of memory. And then the Hollow came. She didn't describe it in detail, only that it was not a ship, not a weapon, not even truly alive. It was absence given form. It consumed not flesh but meaning, stories, names, histories, everything that made a people real. When it passed over a world, nothing remained but empty cities and silent skies. The Scifi fought not with guns but with song, with memory, with light woven from grief, and they lost. Almost all of them. Lyra was one of the last. Ember, she said, was more than a pet. He was a memory warden, bred to carry fragments of her people's essence in his scales. He could cloak them, sense danger, and, when needed, project echoes of lost voices to confuse their enemies. So why here? Claire asked. Why Orion's Edge? Why Malira looked out the viewport, her reflection ghostly against the stars. Because the Hollow is coming here and you carry something it cannot understand. Claire laughed nervously. I'm just a linguist. I translate dead languages. I don't even own a weapon. You carry Earth's voice, Lyra said softly. Not just words. The way your people laugh when they are tired. The way they build homes after fire. The way they name their children after hope. The Hollow feeds on silence. But humanity is loud with life. Even when broken, you sing. Claire didn't know what to say to that. She had spent years feeling small, insignificant in the vastness of space. But Lyra looked at her like she was a lighthouse in a storm. Later, as the station cycled into its artificial night, Lyra lay on a mat Claire had pulled from storage. Ember curled at the foot of Claire's bed, his tiny body rising and falling with slow breaths. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the station and the occasional crackle from Ember's scales. Claire lay awake, staring at the ceiling. You do not sleep, Lyra murmured, not turning. Hard to sleep when an alien elf and her dragon are in my room. Lyra sat up slightly. I can leave if it troubles you. No, Claire said quickly. It's not that. It's just everything you said about the Hollow. Is it really coming? Yes, Lyra said. It follows the quiet places. And Earth has grown quiet in its own way, forgetting its myths, its songs, its old names. The Hollow smells that silence like blood and water. Claire swallowed. So what do we do, remember, Lyra said, and we make noise. Ember lifted his head and let out a low, rumbling purr that vibrated through the floor. It wasn't frightening. It felt like a promise. Claire finally closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. In the dark, Lyra whispered something in her own tongue. A lullaby, maybe. The words were soft, curling like smoke, and they wrapped around Claire like a blanket. She didn't understand them, but she felt their weight. Grief, yes, but also love and defiance. As sleep finally took her, she dreamed of silver forests and dragons made of starlight, and in the dream she wasn't afraid. When she woke hours later, Lyra was still there, sitting cross-legged by the window, watching the stars. Ember was perched on her shoulder, wings tucked tight. Good morning, human, Lyra said without turning. Morning, Claire mumbled, rubbing her eyes. You didn't sleep, I watched the sky, she said. It is changing. The Hollow leaves ripples, like stones dropped in still water. They are faint, but growing. Claire sat up. So what now? Now Lyra turned, her violet eyes meeting Claire's. Now we listen, and we prepare, because when the Hollow comes, it will not expect a human who remembers how to dream. Ember fluttered down and landed on Claire's knee. He nudged her hand with his snout, then let out a soft, warm breath that smelled like rain and old books. Claire smiled faintly and scratched behind his horns. Okay, she said. Let's remember. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the small room, something new had begun. Not just an alliance, but a quiet kind of rebellion. 2 women, 1 dragon, and the stubborn, beautiful noise of being alive. In the days that followed, life on Orion's Edge changed in small but deep ways. Claire no longer ate alone. Lyra joined her at the mess table, though she rarely touched the food. Instead, she absorbed light through her skin, sitting near the station's sun lamps for hours. Ember stayed close, often curled in Claire's lap as she worked, his tiny claws gentle on her uniform. He seemed to understand human speech better than most station AI, tilting his head when Claire sighed or perking up when she laughed. But peace did not last. It began with silence. First, the outer mining colony on Series 9 went dark. No warning, no final transmission, just a sudden drop in all signals. Command assumed a solar flare or system failure. Then Helios Relay Station stopped responding. Then the deep-range scout ship Aurora vanished from long-range scans as if it had never existed. Claire noticed the pattern before anyone else. She had been cross-referencing old Silthari signal fragments with recent blackouts. The gaps weren't random. They formed a slow, spiraling path, like something moving inward toward the core systems, toward Earth. She brought her findings to Lyra that evening. The elf woman listened without speaking, her fingers tracing the edge of Claire's datapad. When Claire finished, Lyra closed her eyes. It is the Hollow, she said. How can you be sure? Because it does not destroy. It empties, like a cup turned upside down. No explosion, No wreckage, just nothing left to say. Ember, who had been napping on the shelf above Claire's bed, suddenly sat up. His scales dimmed from gold to deep red, and a low hum vibrated in his chest. He leapt down and pressed himself against Lyra's leg, trembling. He senses it too, Claire whispered. Yes, Lyra said. He feels the silence growing. That night, Lyra's dreams grew worse. She woke gasping, her skin slick with sweat that shimmered like dew under moonlight. She spoke in her sleep, words in a language Claire had never heard, full of sorrow and starlight. Once she cried out a name, Ilara, and Claire held her until the shaking stopped. What happened to Ilara? Claire asked gently the next morning. My sister Lyra said, staring at her hands. She stayed behind to guard the memory vault on Silther Prime. She sang the last song as the hollow entered the city. I heard it in my mind for 3 cycles. Then it faded, like a voice underwater. Claire didn't know what to say, so she made tea. Real earth tea from a sealed packet her grandmother had sent years ago. Lyra accepted it with quiet thanks, though she only held the cup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. As the blackout spread, panic began to ripple through the network. Civilian ships rerouted. Military patrols doubled, but no one could find an enemy. No weapons fire. No debris fields. Just empty stations, empty colonies, empty lives. Claire spent hours in the comms room listening to the static between channels. Most dismissed it as noise. But she heard something else, a faint rhythmic pulse beneath the hiss. Like a heartbeat, or a breath. She recorded it, played it back for Lyra. The elf woman went very still. That is the hollow's echo, she said. It feeds on memory, but it leaves a shadow behind, like footprints in snow. Ember crept closer, his eyes wide. He let out a soft whine. Can we track it? Claire asked. Not with your machines, Lyra said. But Ember can. He carries Silthari memory in his blood. He can follow the cold spots, the places where stories have been stolen. So they began a new routine. Each night after station lights dimmed, Claire and Lyra would sit in the observation dome with Ember between them. The dragon would close his eyes. Wings spread slightly and send out pulses of low-frequency energy, inaudible to humans, but visible as faint ripples in the air. When he sensed a memory void, his scales would flash black for a split second. One evening he did more than flash. He shrieked. The sound was sharp and high, like glass breaking in a dream. Claire clapped her hands over her ears. Lyra grabbed Ember, holding him close as he trembled violently. What is it? What did you see? Lyra's voice was tight. Proxima Colony, it is gone. Not just silent, erased as if it never was. Claire felt cold. Proxima had over 10,000 souls, farms, schools, a music hall that broadcast folk songs every Sunday. All of it, gone. Why us, she asked. Why is it coming this way? Because Earth is old, Lyra said. Older than your records say. Your myths speak of watchers in the sky, of dragons and starborn women. Those are not lies. They are echoes. The Silthari walked among your ancestors. We taught them to name the wind, to read the stars, to sing to their dead. That connection, it left a thread. And the hollow follows threads. Claire thought of the lullaby her grandmother used to sing, a strange tune with no words, just hums and clicks. She had always thought it was nonsense. Now she wondered. That night she played the recording of the static again. This time she slowed it down, filtered the frequencies. Beneath the noise she heard something else, a pattern. Not random, structured almost like language, but not human. She showed it to Lyra. The elf woman's breath caught. That is Silthari morning code. It is how we mark a world that has fallen. Someone or something is broadcasting it from the void. Ember suddenly leapt onto the console, his claws tapping the screen near a specific waveform. He chirped insistently. What is it? Claire asked. Lyra leaned closer. That pulse. It matches the rhythm of the Great Archive, the Weeping Veil, the Wada Nebula near the galactic rim. It is not just gas and dust. It is alive. It holds the last full memory of my people. If the hollow reaches it, everything is lost. Claire stared at the data. The hollow's path was curving, not straight to Earth, but toward the Weeping Veil first. It wanted the archive. It wanted to erase the last witness. We have to warn someone. There's no one to warn, Lyra said softly. The Silthari are gone. The alliance is broken. Only humans remain, and they do not even know they are in a war. But we know, Claire said. Yes, Lyra looked at her, and that makes you dangerous. Over the next few days, Claire dug deeper into Earth's oldest records. She pulled up fragments of Sumerian tablets, Vedic hymns, Native American star stories. Again and again, she found references to sky sisters and fire serpents who came from the stars to teach and protect. In every culture, the story was slightly different, but the core was the same. Beings of light who left when the world grew cold. She also found something else. Buried in a forgotten archive of pre-cataclysmic Earth music was a lullaby, the same one her grandmother sang. And when she played it beside the Silthari morning code, the rhythms aligned, like two halves of a key. Lyra listened, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. "Your people remembered," she whispered, even when they forgot why. Ember nudged Claire's hand, then looked toward the viewport. His scales pulsed gently, a soft blue now. "What is it?" "He senses a shift," Lyra said. "The hollow is closer. It has tasted Proxima. Now it hungers for more." That evening, the station's main comms array failed. Not from damage, from silence. The signal just stopped. Engineers found nothing wrong with the hardware. It was as if the very idea of communication had been removed from that space. Claire knew then they were out of time. "We can't stay here," she said. No, Lyra agreed, "but we cannot run blindly. We must carry the memory forward. You, Claire, are the bridge. Your voice can wake what the hollow has made dormant me." Claire laughed nervously. "I'm not a hero. I translate dead words." "You give them life again," Lyra said firmly. "That is the most powerful magic there is." Ember fluttered onto Claire's shoulder and nuzzled her cheek. His warmth was steady, real. "Okay," Claire said. "What do we do? Find a ship? A fast one. And we go to the Weeping Vale. If we can reach the archive before the hollow, we might be able to activate its defenses. And if we're too late, then we become the archive," Lyra said simply. That night, as alarms finally blared through the station, Proxima's last automated beacon had just winked out. Claire packed what she could. Data drives, her grandmother's tea, a small recorder. Lyra carried only her pendant and a thin blade made of crystallized starlight. Ember coiled around her neck like a living scarf, his eyes scanning the shadows. They moved through the dim corridors, avoiding crew who were now panicking over the comms failure. At the docking bay, Claire used her clearance to access a scout vessel, small, fast, built for deep-range surveying. It wasn't armed, but it was quiet. As they boarded, Ember suddenly froze. His scales turned black. "What is it?" Claire whispered. Lyra's voice was barely audible. "It is here, not on the station, not yet, but near. Watching. Waiting." They sealed the hatch just as the station's lights flickered once, then died. In the sudden dark, only Ember's eyes glowed, a soft, steady amber. Claire powered up the ship with trembling hands. Engines hummed to life. Outside, the stars seemed to hold their breath. Lyra placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are not alone." Claire nodded. She engaged the thrusters and the ship lifted from the bay, pushing into the endless dark. Behind them, Orion's edge went silent. Ahead, the void waited, but for the first time, it would not be empty, because Claire carried a lullaby, and Lyra carried a war, and Ember carried hope. The scout ship drifted through the black, its engines on low power to avoid detection. Claire sat at the controls, eyes fixed on the star map, while Lyra meditated in the rear cabin, her hands resting on Ember's back. The dragon's scales pulsed slowly like a heartbeat made of light. They had been traveling for 3 days, and the silence outside grew heavier with each hour. Then the alarms blared. Not loud sirens, just a soft, urgent beep from the sensor panel. Claire's stomach dropped. She saw it immediately. 3 contacts closing fast. No transponder codes. No heat signatures. Just void-shaped distortions in space like rips in fabric. The hollow scouts. Lyra was at her side in an instant. Ember leapt onto the console, his body rigid, scales shifting to deep crimson. "They found us," Claire whispered. "They always would." Lyra said, "But we are not defenseless. What do we do?" "We have no weapons. We have memory," Lyra said. "And we have you." Before Claire could ask what she meant, the first scout ship, though it was less a ship and more a shifting mass of fractured light, slammed into the hull. The impact was silent, but the ship shuddered as if struck by a ghost. Lights flickered. Systems stuttered. Ember let out a high-pitched cry and launched himself toward the cockpit window. He hovered there, wings spread wide, and opened his mouth. What came out was not fire. It was sound, but not like any sound Claire had heard. It was layered, complex, full of harmonics that seemed to vibrate in her bones. It was the song of 1,000 voices woven together, some human, some alien, some ancient beyond knowing. The hollow scout recoiled, its form rippling like water struck by a stone. Lyra raised her hands. Her fingers moved in quick, precise patterns, tracing symbols in the air. Where she moved, light gathered, soft at first, then bright. It wasn't laser or plasma. It was memory made visible. Scenes flickered in the air, a child planting a seed, an old man telling stories by firelight, a woman singing to her newborn. Each image burned with quiet power. The hollow hated it. The second scout lunged, trying to phase through the hull. But as it touched the barrier of light, it screamed, a soundless scream that made Claire's teeth ache. It dissolved into mist, then vanished. "How are you doing this?" Claire asked. Awe mixing with fear. "The Scifi do not fight with force," Lyra said, her voice strained. "We fight with truth. The hollow feeds on forgetting. But memory is armor." Ember landed on Claire's shoulder, panting. His glow dimmed slightly. He had used much of his energy. "We can't keep this up," Claire said. "There are more coming. I can see them on long range." "Then we give them more to remember," Lyra said. "Sing, Claire. Sing your lullaby. The one from your blood. It is not just a song. It is a key." Claire hesitated. She hadn't sung it since she was a child. But with Ember's warm weight on her shoulder and Lyra's steady gaze, she closed her eyes and began. It started soft, just hums and gentle syllables, passed down through generations who no longer knew their meaning. But as she sang, something changed. The ship's dormant systems flickered back to life. Not all at once, but in pulses that matched her voice. The comms array sparked. The navigation grid lit up. Even the emergency lights glowed with a warm, golden hue. And then the station's old defense grid, long thought offline, activated. Not with missiles or lasers, with stories. Recordings poured from the ship's speakers. A jazz trumpet from New Orleans. A grandmother's voice reading a bedtime tale. A protest chant from the Rio summit. A fisherman's sea shanty from the Pacific Islands. Each voice carried joy, pain, love, rage, everything the hollow could not consume because it was too alive, too messy, too human. The third scout hesitated. It circled the ship, its form flickering like a dying bulb. It tried to attack again, but the wall of sound and memory pushed it back. With a final ripple, it shattered into nothing. Silence returned. Claire stopped singing, breathless. Her hands shook. Did we win for now?" Lyra said, lowering her arms. "But the hollow does not die, it learns. And now it knows you are here." Ember nuzzled Claire's cheek, his scales slowly returning to gold. He let out a soft purr as if to say, "You did well." Claire looked at the star map. They were still far from the Weeping Veil, days away, even at full burn. And now the hollow knew their path. "We need to move faster," she said. Lyra nodded. "But there is another way." The Scifi left hidden paths, memory lanes, through folded space. Only those who carry the right song can find them. "You mean my lullabies? It is not just yours. It is ours. Your ancestors and mine walked the same sky long ago. The song is the map." Claire took a deep breath. "Okay. Show me." Lyra placed her hands on the console, guiding Claire's fingers to specific coordinates. Ember perched on the nav screen, his claws tapping a rhythm that matched the lullaby's beat. As Claire hummed again, the stars outside seemed to shift. Space bent not with force but with feeling. A corridor of soft light opened ahead, a tunnel woven from echoes of the past. They entered it. Inside, time felt different. Moments from Earth's history played out around them like ghosts. Farmers harvesting wheat under twin suns in ancient Mesopotamia, poets writing under cherry blossoms in Kyoto, children laughing in a rainstorm in Nairobi. Each scene was brief but vivid, full of life. "This is how the Scifi traveled," Lyra said softly. "Not by speed but by story. The universe remembers those who remember it." Claire felt tears in her eyes. She had spent her life studying dead languages, thinking she was preserving the past. But this was the past living through her. "How did humans forget all this fear?" Lyra said. "War. Time. When the Scifi left, we sealed the doors so the hollow could not follow. But sealing the doors also hid the truth. Your people kept fragments in songs, in dreams, and myths, but they did not know what they held." Ember chirped and pointed with his snout toward the end of the tunnel. A bright point of light grew ahead. "The Weeping Veil," Claire said. "Yes. And it is waiting." As they exited the memory lane, the nebula filled the viewport, a vast cloud of violet and silver gas, swirling like a storm of tears. At its heart pulsed a soft, steady light. But something was wrong. Dark tendrils curled around the edges of the nebula, like ink in water. The hollow was already there. "It's too soon," Claire said. "We're not ready. We are all we have," Lyra replied, "and we are enough." Ember flew to the front window and let out a low, steady hum. This time it was not a weapon. It was a call, the nebula responded. Light rippled through the gas, forming shapes, faces, hands, entire cities made of memory. The last voices of the Silthari rose in a chorus, welcoming their daughter home. Lyra placed a hand on the hull. "I am here, Mother Nebula. I bring a human voice." The veil parted, just enough for the ship to enter. Inside there was no gravity, no time, only floating fragments of history, books made of light, music written in starlight, paintings that moved with emotion. Claire saw her own childhood home reflected in a shard of memory, then her grandmother's face, smiling. "This is incredible," she whispered. "It is all that remains," Lyra said. "If the hollow consumes this, the universe will forget us forever." They docked the ship on a platform of solidified memory, a disk of light shaped like a lotus. As they stepped out, Ember stayed close, his glow brighter than ever. The hollow was inside, too. Not as a ship, but as a presence. A cold, empty space that pulled at the light around it. Wherever it passed, memories dimmed, then vanished. "We have to stop it here," Claire said. "How the archive needs a voice to awaken fully, a human voice. Yours, me again, you carry the song. And the song carries the key." Claire looked at Lyra. The elf woman's eyes were full of trust and something else. "Hope." "Okay," she said. She walked to the center of the platform. Ember circled above her, casting a ring of warm light. Lyra stood at the edge, arms raised, weaving barriers of memory to hold back the hollow. Claire closed her eyes and began to sing. Not just the lullaby this time. She added words, English words, simple and true. She sang of her grandmother's garden, of rainy days in Seattle, of the first time she saw the stars from Mars. She sang of loss and laughter, of small kindnesses and quiet courage. And the archive listened. Light poured from the nebula, wrapping around her voice, amplifying it. The hollow shrieked, a sound of pure negation, and surged forward. But Claire did not stop. She sang louder. The memories in the veil rose to meet her. Silthari voices joined hers. Human voices from every age echoed through the chamber. The hollow writhed, unable to feed on such chaotic living noise. Lyra stepped forward, her body glowing with starlight. She placed her hand on Claire's shoulder. Together they sang. Ember landed between them and released a final, powerful note, a sound that held the first breath of the universe and the last sigh of a dying star. The hollow shattered, not exploded, not fled. Shattered into harmless fragments of silence that dissolved into the light. The chamber fell still. Claire collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Lyra knelt beside her, holding her close. Ember curled in her lap, purring softly. "We did it," Claire whispered. "No," Lyra said gently. "You did it. You reminded the universe that humans are worth remembering." Outside the veil, the stars seemed brighter, and for the first time in centuries, the void felt full. After the battle in the weeping veil, silence returned, but this time it was peaceful. The nebula glowed softly, its violet clouds swirling with renewed light. Claire sat on the memory platform, wrapped in a blanket woven from starlight that Lyra had summoned. Ember lay curled in her lap, his breathing slow and steady, his scales pulsing with a gentle gold warmth. She felt hollowed out, not by loss, but by awe. She had sung and the universe had answered. Lyra stood at the edge of the platform, gazing into the heart of the veil. Her silver skin shimmered with a new light, not just from within, but from the archive itself. The veil had recognized her, accepted her, and in doing so, it had changed her. "You are different," Claire said quietly. Lyra turned. "Yes, the veil has shared its core with me. I am no longer just Silthari. I am also keeper of the last memory, and now, part human too. Part human. Your song entered me when we sang together. Your hope, your grief, your stubborn joy, they are in my blood now. Like roots in soil." Claire looked down at her hands. She still couldn't believe she had done what she did. She was just a linguist. Not a warrior, not a hero. Just someone who remembered old songs, But Lyra knelt beside her and took her hands. That is why you were chosen. The hollow fears weapons, but it cannot fight a lullaby. It cannot erase a grandmother's voice in a child's ear. You carry what it cannot understand. Love that does not ask to be remembered, but gives anyway. Ember lifted his head and let out a soft chirp, as if agreeing. They stayed in the Vale for 2 days, letting the archive heal them. Claire walked through floating halls of memory, touching echoes of civilizations long gone. She saw Silthari children playing in crystal forests, heard poets recite verses that made stars tremble, watched lovers exchange vows under twin moons. Each memory was alive, not frozen in time, but breathing. Lyra showed her the chamber of final songs, the place where her people had recorded their last moments before the hollow came. One recording stood out, a woman with Lyra's eyes singing softly as the sky burned. That is Alara, Lyra said, her voice thick. My sister. She stayed so the rest could flee. She sang until her voice became light. Claire reached out and touched the image. It didn't vanish. Instead, it flowed into her fingertips, warm and sad. For a moment she heard the song, not in her ears but in her bones. I'm sorry, she said. Do not be sorry, Lyra replied. Remember her. That is how she lives. On the 3rd day, Lyra called Claire to the central spire, a tower of pure memory that rose from the heart of the Vale. Its surface shifted with images of every species the Silthari had ever known. At its peak pulsed a soft white light. This is the core, Lyra said. To seal the Vale forever against the hollow, I must merge with it. Become its voice, its will, its dream. Claire's breath caught. Merge how my body will fade. My mind will join the archive. I will be everywhere and nowhere. I will watch over the stories, guard the songs, and wait for those who remember to return. You'll die, not die. Transform. Like a river joining the sea. But it requires an anchor. A living mind to tether me to the world of breath and blood. Without it, I may drift too far. Lose myself in the endless memory. And you want me to be that anchor, Ease. Only a human can do it. Because humans live in the moment. Even while remembering the past. Your mind is rooted in now. It will keep me from dissolving completely. Claire looked at Ember, who had gone very still. His eyes were wide, worried. What happens to me if I do it? You will carry the archive within you. Not all of it, just enough to hold the bridge. You will hear echoes, see flashes, feel the weight of many lives. It may be heavy. It may change you. And if I say nothing, the Vale remains open. The hollow may return, and next time it will bring more than scouts. Claire sat down on the platform edge, staring into the swirling light below. She thought of Earth, of crowded cities and quiet farms, of music and arguments, of people who forgot their myths but still told bedtime stories. She thought of her grandmother, humming that lullaby without knowing its power. She thought of Lyra, who had lost everything but still offered trust. Okay, she said, I'll do it. Lyra's eyes filled with something like gratitude, like sorrow, like joy all at once. Thank you, Claire. That night they prepared. Ember gathered memory shards, tiny crystals that held moments of peace, and placed them in a circle around the spire. Lyra wove a crown of starlight and set it gently on Claire's head. It did not burn. It hummed. As the ritual began, Lyra stepped into the core. Light rose around her, lifting her off the ground. She reached out and Claire took her hand. The moment their skin touched, the world dissolved. Claire saw everything. Silthari cities built on comet tails, human tribes painting stars on cave walls, whales singing in deep oceans, trees whispering in ancient forests, wars fought over nothing, lovers reuniting after lifetimes, a child's first step, a last breath. 1,000 lullabies in 1,000 tongues, it was too much. She screamed, but no sound came out. She was drowning in memory. Then she remembered her own voice. She began to hum. The lullaby. Slowly, the flood calmed. The memories did not leave, they settled like dust after a storm. She was still Claire. But now she was also more. She felt Lyra's presence, not gone but woven into her thoughts like a second heartbeat. The light faded. Claire stood alone in the spire, breathing hard. Ember rushed to her side, pressing against her leg. She looked down. Her eyes still looked human, but if she stared too long, she saw stars behind them. Lyra was gone from the world of flesh. But she was not gone. Claire placed a hand on her chest. I feel you. A whisper echoed in her mind. Always. They left the Vale the next morning. The ship felt smaller now, quieter. But Claire no longer felt alone. As they flew toward the inner systems, Ember sat on her shoulder, watching the stars with new understanding. "You okay?" he seemed to ask with a nudge. "I will be," she said. Days passed. Claire began to notice changes. She could understand old Earth dialects without translation. She dreamed in Silthari. Sometimes when she touched a person, she glimpsed fragments of their past. A birthday, a loss, a secret joy. It was overwhelming at first, but Lyra's presence helped her carry it. "You are learning to hold the world gently," Lyra whispered in her mind. Claire smiled. "I'm just trying not to drop it." As they neared the Sol system, a new signal appeared on the comms. A human broadcast, clear and strong. It was a children's choir singing a folk song from Ireland. Simple, joyful, alive. Ember perked up. His scales glowed brighter. "They still sing," Claire said, tears in her eyes. "Yes." Lyra's voice was warm. "And as long as they do, the Hollow can never win." Claire set a course for Earth. Not to hide, not to rest, but to teach, to remind, to help humanity remember that they were never alone in the dark, because now she carried the light. And beside her, Ember purred, a sound like distant stars waking up. The ship drifted into Earth orbit on a quiet morning. Clouds swirled below, white and soft over blue oceans and green lands. Cities glittered like scattered jewels, humming with life. Claire stood at the viewport, her hands resting on the cool glass. Ember sat on her shoulder, his wings tucked close, his scales glowing a calm amber. He had grown slightly larger since the veil, his horns more defined, his eyes deeper, as if he too carried memory now. They had been gone for months. To Earth it felt like years. Down there, no one knew about the Hollow. No one knew about the Silthari, or the war fought in silence between stars. They lived their lives, working, loving, arguing, dreaming, unaware that their songs had saved the archive, that their forgotten lullabies had turned back the void. But Claire knew, and Lyra knew, from the quiet place inside her mind. "You are ready," Lyra whispered. "I don't know," Claire said softly. "How do I tell them without sounding mad?" "You do not tell them with words alone," Lyra replied. "You show them with living. Plant seeds. Sing in the streets. Teach children the old names for the wind. Let them feel the truth before they understand it." Ember chirped and nudged her cheek. He knew what came next. They landed not at a military port, but in a small coastal town in Oregon. Claire had chosen it because it reminded her of home. Wooden docks, salt air, seagulls crying overhead. She wore simple clothes, no uniform, no insignia, just a woman returning from far away. At first, people were wary. A stranger with strange eyes and a small dragon on her shoulder was not common, even in a world used to alien contact. But Ember charmed them quickly. He helped old Mrs. Hale find her lost cat by humming a low note that made the animal purr from under the porch. He warmed the hands of fishermen on cold mornings with gentle puffs of cinnamon-scented smoke. Children followed him like a living lantern, laughing as he made his scales shimmer in rainbow patterns. Claire opened a small shop near the harbor. Not a store, but a place called the Remembering Room. Inside, she kept books of old Earth tales, recordings of folk songs, maps of star patterns known to ancient cultures. She taught anyone who came how to listen, not just with ears, but with heart. She showed them how a lullaby could calm a storm inside, how a story could heal a wound words could not touch. Slowly, people began to stay longer. They shared their own stories, of grandparents who spoke to trees, of dreams that felt like memories, of songs they couldn't explain but always made them cry. Claire listened, and when she touched their hands, she saw flashes, their joys, their griefs, and sometimes she whispered a Silthari word that fit the feeling perfectly. They didn't understand the word, but they felt its truth. Months passed. News of the Remembering Room spread. Scholars came, artists came, even a few quiet soldiers who had seen too much and needed to remember why they fought. Claire never spoke of the Hollow directly. She spoke of memory as a shield, of stories as weapons against forgetting, and people began to understand. One evening, as the sun set over the Pacific, Lyra appeared not in body but in light. A soft silver glow formed near the water's edge, shaped like her but made of mist and starlight. Children pointed, not afraid but curious. Ember flew to her, circling once before landing in her translucent hands. "You came back," Claire said, walking toward her. For a little while, Lyra said, "The veil is strong now. The Hollow is scattered, feeding on dust. It will take centuries to gather again." And by then, your people will be ready. How do you know? Because they are already remembering. Look. Claire turned. On the beach, a group of teenagers were singing, an old sea shanty passed down through generations. Farther off, an elder was teaching a child how to name the stars in Navajo. In the town square, someone played a flute made of river reed, its notes curling into the twilight like smoke. They are loud with life, Lyra said. Just as you promised, Claire smiled. We all are. That night, Claire returned to her small house above the shop. Ember curled on the windowsill watching the moon. She sat on her bed, tired but full. Then the door opened. Lyra stepped inside, solid this time, her silver skin catching the lamplight. Ember chirped happily and flew to her, nuzzling her neck. You're real again, Claire said, surprised. Not forever, Lyra said, but the veil allows me this, to walk among the living while the memory holds strong. And I wish to see you, to thank you. You don't have to thank me, I do. You gave my people a future, not in stone or data, but in human hearts. That is the greatest honor. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves. Then Lyra looked at Claire with those deep violet eyes. Can I sleep beside you tonight? Human Claire laughed softly. You asked me that once before. On a cold station in the middle of nowhere. And you said yes, Lyra smiled. Though you were afraid. I'm not afraid anymore, no. You are the bridge now, and bridges do not fear the dark. Ember hopped onto the bed and settled between them, his warmth a steady comfort. Lyra lay down on the other side, her presence calm and familiar. Outside the world slept. Inside, 3 souls rested, human, elf, and dragon, bound by memory, trust, and something deeper than words. In the morning, Lyra was gone again. Only a silver feather lay on the pillow, glowing faintly. Ember picked it up gently in his claws and placed it on Claire's desk. Beside her grandmother's tea tin, life went on. Claire kept teaching, Ember kept watching, and Lyra watched from the stars, her voice a whisper in the wind, a hum in the rain, a lullaby in a mother's arms. Years later, when new ships from distant worlds came seeking Earth's wisdom, they did not find warriors or weapons. They found storytellers, musicians, gardeners who sang to their plants, children who knew the names of constellations in 10 languages, and in the center of it all, a woman with starlight in her eyes and a small dragon at her side. The hollow never returned, not because it was destroyed, but because it found a world too full of noise, too full of love, too full of memory to ever be empty again. And every night, when Claire lay down to sleep, Ember curled beside her, and sometimes, just sometimes, she felt a cool hand brush her hair, and heard a soft voice whisper, "Can I sleep beside you tonight, human?" And she always answered, always.